Hello everyone and welcome to another video. So today's video is going to be my May wrap up. So in the month of May, I read a total of 12 books. My average for the number of books I read in a month is getting a lot higher compared to last year, and this is saying something, and I'm not doing anything entirely different with my reading. So this is a little bit bizarre to see it increase from like roughly 6 to 8 to 12 books in a month. Interesting. Not my most read, but a decent amount of books read a month. So in the month of May, I read 12 books with a total page count of 3,766. An average pages per day was 125.53, so about 126-ish pages per day. My average page count was 313.83, so around 313 to 314 is my average book length that I read this year, which is really good. That does say something for me. I do read a lot of books that are 300 pages in length. I usually don't tend to read a whole lot of big books. I do read big books, and you'll see that for my June wrap up. I'll be reading more bigger books than normal. I try to keep my average page count of the book I'm picking up at around between 300 and 500 is a decent sized book for me. And I do, of course, will read more books. My most read genre this month, to no surprises anyone, is fantasy. It is my most favorite genre. I read 7 books with some form of representation in them, whether or not that's LGBTQ plus or mental health. And then 6 of the 12 books this month were from authors that I've at least read a book of theirs in my reading lifetime, or at least the past couple of years. See, star breakdown. I gave out a total of 3 5 stars. I gave 1 4.5 star. I gave 5 4 stars, 2 3.5 stars, and 1 3 star. I read 1 new release book that came out this year. I read 9 backlist books published. Which backlist book is a book that was published not this year, not last year. So these are books that were published in 2021 or later. And then I read 2 books that were published last year. For the format I read these in, I read a total of 8 physical books, 2 audiobooks, and 2 ebooks. I usually don't read my books in mixed media form. I usually don't. It's either physical, audio for at work and for doing some chores here around the house, and then ebook. I read my ebooks at night, in the morning when I wake up if I'm feeling like it, and I read ebooks at work while I'm on lunch break. And a little bit, sometimes I may read a couple pages while I'm using the restroom. Let's see. Series breakdown. I started 2 series this month. I continued 1. I completed 1. And I read a total of 7 standalone books. 2 books I read on my Kindle. 8 books I have owned, and I own them physically. And then 2 were books I read off of Scribd. My audiobooks I got off of Scribd, and my Kindle books I read on my Kindle. I read 2 sci-fi books, 4 fantasy, 1 manga. We're not technically counting that as a genre, but I read 1 manga. 4 contemporary, and 1 romance. So that is the bulk of all my stats But I'm pretty certain you guys would like to know what books I actually did read in the month of May, since I didn't do a vlog for these books. I'm going to be doing monthly vlogs going forward with my one, where I will go more in depth and do book reviews for those books. But for my wrap-ups, they're going to be more stats-based, which I know you guys are all totally into stats. I love stats myself. So for me to do a stats-based wrap-up for you guys, I think is going to work a lot better for me in the future. Plus, they're a little bit easier for me to film in general. So I like that idea. Those are all of the basic stats. Let's get into the nitty-gritty of this wrap-up. I.e. what books I read and what stars they got. So, the first book that I finished in the month of May was, I finished an audiobook that I had started back in April, which was Dirk Gently's Holistic Detective Agency, which I ended up giving 3 stars. Read this one on audio while I was traveling. So I did a little bit of traveling in April, and then I finished it up on my evenings at work. Ended up giving this book 3 stars. My first actual physical read of the month of May was In the Lives of Puppets by TJ Klune. Y'all know TJ Klune is my absolute favorite author. Of course, I gave this 5 stars. Absolutely loved it. Surprised me in the end. I didn't think I would like this book when I first heard the premise, since this is a retelling of Pinocchio. Definitely surprised me. This, honestly, I would love to see this adapted more. I would love to see an adaptation of this. Different. And as far as all the retellings I've read, this is up there with The Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller. This is up there also with Percy Jackson, which is other Greek myth retellings. I love this, 5 stars. TJ Klune is one of my all-time favorite authors. This was a new release and came out this year. And then I read SpyxFamily Volume 1. I gave first volume this 4.5 stars. This series, with the first one getting 4.5 stars, has potential for a 5-star book in this manga series further down the line. Really cute. I'm excited to start watching the anime. I may have to read a couple of volumes before I do that, though. But I'm very much looking forward to continuing with this manga series in general. I love spies, and this did that part justice, as well as the found family trope, which is one of my favorite tropes in general. So 4.5 stars. I then read an ebook. I finished the Frostheart trilogy by Jamie Littler, and I read Frostheart 3 Rise of the World Eater. I ended up giving this book 4 stars. For middle grade, this series is really good, up there with Nevermore series by Jessica Townsend, and a little bit up there with Amari and the Night Briars, but more so in the lines of Nevermore. Really like this. I did know where it was going when I read the book. I did kind of know how it would end, but I'm glad it went in that direction, and it did. Very nice middle grade book series, as it definitely reads middle grade. There are a whole bunch of hard-hitting topics and stuff. So if you're an adult and like to read middle grade books, I would highly check out the Frostheart trilogy by Jamie Littler. Then I read The Foxhole Court by Nora Sakovic, and I ended up giving this book 3.5 stars. This series does have further potential, and I will be continuing, even though this did get 3.5 stars. has potential for it to go further with me. I thought I would like this book a little bit more, but I realized while reading this book, that this is fairly short, and I think I would need a whole bind up. Of course, there's LGBT rep in this series, but this is a slow burn upon slow burns. And while I love a slow burn, I would have loved a little bit more romance in here, and that's the only reason why it got 3.5 stars. So I will be continuing, even though I sometimes usually don't with my 3.5 star series. I will be continuing because this has potential. Then I read Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin. This book has been trailing the BookTube and BookTok community and has gotten hype. Gabrielle Zevin wrote The Storied Life of AJ Thickery, which I read in 2021 for Becca's Bookathon, and I absolutely really enjoyed that book. I think I gave it 4 stars, and this book got 4 stars as well. I really liked how this book was told. I'm very glad that I ended up reading Tomorrow, and I do see what all the hype is about, and I will definitely be checking out Gabrielle Zevin's work, as I've now read 2 of her books and I really enjoy them, so I will definitely be checking out more of their work. The next book that I read the novelization of My Neighbor Tortoro by Hayao Miyazaki and Suzuko Kubo. This is a novelized version of course, the Studio Ghibli of the entire same name, and of course, it's done with all its beautiful illustrations, and I ended up giving this 4 stars. Would have probably given this book a higher rating if I had watched the movie after I read it, or vice versa. Would have probably gotten a higher rating. I do like the movie My Neighbor Tortoro. It's one of my favorite Ghibli movies, and had I read this book after I saw that movie for the first time, this may have gotten a higher rating. But 4 stars nonetheless. Will definitely be keeping this book in my collection. And I think Hayao Miyazaki may be doing more other novelizations of their mangas. I think there's a Kiki's Delivery Service one, which I will definitely be reading, as Kiki's Delivery Service is my all-time favorite Studio Ghibli movie, along with House Moving Castle. So I'll be definitely reading those books. And then the next book that I finished was I read Heartstopper Yearbook by Alice Oseman. Y'all know this got 5 stars. It absolutely did. This is not even truly a real book, more of a companion novel to the Heartstopper graphic novel series. I mean, there are panels and pictures in here of my 2 babies, which I've never seen before, and in hindsight into how Alice Oseman created the story of Heartstopper and of Nick and Charlie itself, I think if you guys haven't read the Heartstopper graphic novel series, or if you have and haven't picked up this, highly consider doing so, as it will enhance your reading experience. Probably should read this one after you've at least read one of the volumes, at least, but I think probably should read this one after the third novel. The 3rd volume, I think, is when you probably should read this. Some things that happen, you need the context to have to form in the actual graphic novels itself. But yeah, 5 stars. Heartstopper is my absolute favorite. I can't wait for the 2nd season of the TV show, which comes out in August, as well as Volume 5, which comes out in November. Very highly anticipating both of those to come out this year. And then I finished, second audiobook of the month is I read The Sky Blues by Robbie Couch. And I ended up giving this book 4 stars. A really good YA contemporary graphic novel set in Michigan, which is the state I live in, so that was really cool. And I really liked the partial mystery that surrounded this story as well. I will have to check out Robbie Couch's other works, because I know he's written another book, and I'm possibly wondering if it's also set in Michigan, because that would be really cool if all of his books that he wrote were set in Michigan. That'd be really cool. And then I read The Love Hypothesis by Allie Hazelwood, and I ended up giving this 5 stars. This is the romance that I love. I have read Book Lovers by Emily Henry, and of course I've read Heartstopper, which Heartstopper is on a whole nother level. But I enjoyed this more than Book Lovers by Emily Henry. While the writing style in Book Lovers is different and what you typically see in a romance, this is more so written in a rom-com and fan fiction style, and I absolutely loved it. I also loved the fact that it's about STEM. Yes, technically this is depicted as also being Kylo Ren fanfic, but you know, I'm Star Wars over Star Trek, so I will take that anyways. We'll definitely be checking out Allie Hazelwood's other books and see if they take the cake as well as this one did. I also found out that I may like the fake dating trope, and this is also Drunk Grumpy Sunshine, which I also like. So 5 stars to The Love Hypothesis. And then I read Saga Volume 6 by Brian K. Vaughan and Piano Staples, and I ended up giving this 4 stars. All of the Saga volumes have gotten 4 stars for me, which doesn't say anything much. I thought maybe a couple would get higher than 4 stars, but I think it's because these are so short, they get 4 stars, and it's really hard to take myself and put myself in the concept of these stories. When I read them, I think it draws me in and then draws me out very quickly. So I think that's why they get 4 stars. But nonetheless, I will be continuing with Saga. Of course, I'm this far in, so I might as well. I'm definitely going to be continuing. And then I read The Year of Shadows by Clara Glenn, which I ended up giving 3.5 stars. This was a decent middle grade. I love the fact that this book was about music, and it also touches on grief, which is a concept in books that I really enjoy. But I think in this one, I would have loved for it to be more about the music than opposed to the grief. And the only reason why I think it got 3.5 stars is it's a decent middle grade. It doesn't take the cake, or is as opposed to Nevermore and as opposed to Frost Heart as it does. It's a decent middle grade if you guys are looking to read more middle grade books. I'd suggest that you check that book out. And a 3 stars rating doesn't hurt it, since it's a middle grade standalone. So, this is all of the physical books that I read in the month of May. A decent stack of physical books. This is 8. This is not most physical books I've read in a month, but it's most I've read consistently for a month. If we're counting the other 2 months, this is pretty consistent now. I'm hoping the rest of the year goes this well, because if it does, then I will surpass 100 books this year, which I would love to try and see if I can actually do, because I never have. All of them. A couple 5 stars, 4 stars, and 3.5 stars, and 1 3. So a decent reading month for the month of May. So, thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you did, please give this book a like and subscribe for more bookish content from me. Comment down below if you guys have read any of these books. I did manage to read a new release this month, And if you've read any of these books in this stack, comment what you rated them, because I'd love to see if our ratings are similar. If you want to, let me know you're here but don't want to say anything. Leave me a tree emoji for In the Lives of Puppets, or leave me a leaf emoji for Heartstopper Volume 5. Heartstopper Yearbook. Thank you guys so much for watching this video, and remember, we are the one within the all.